And joining us right now on the Burns and Gambo Show, we welcome him back to our show because if I remember right, we had him on last year and we very much enjoyed our conversation. ESPN NFL draft analyst and insider Matt Miller at NFL Draft Scout is where he can be found on X, and he joins us here on the Burns and Gambo Show. Matt, welcome back to the program, man. How are we doing today?
Oh, appreciate you guys having me back.
Yeah, I got to start with Cam Skattebo. Having gone to so many of those games this year and haven't seen him in person, like we have this different perspective. We get to watch him every week. I think a lot of the fans across the country didn't know much about him until, the playoff game or maybe the Big 12 championship game. Give me your thoughts on him, what he did at the Combine, where you see him going in this draft.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to tackle him. That is my first takeaway with Cam Skattebo was watching him in the college football playoffs, especially. It's like, we saw him in the regular season, and he was dominant. But I think there's always that question in the back of your mind of like, okay, well, what about when he has to play up, against bigger, better schools? Well, there was no better defense in the country than Texas, especially against the run. And those Longhorns, they should have packed a lunch. They didn't know what they were getting with him, man. And he's fantastic. So I'm a huge fan. We didn't see him do anything at the Senior Bowl or the Combine. So, his pre-draft process has kind of been quiet. Understandably, to some degree, these guys, the season went so long for those teams that were in the finals. And so you're so far behind the 8 ball at that point, as a prospect. It's okay. Everyone else has been working out for 8 weeks and I've been still playing football. So I think those are the big question marks for him is okay, Pro Day is going to be important and he'll do the Big 12 Pro Day, obviously. But Pro Day is going to be important for him just because we haven't seen him since that Texas game. But he's a baller. He is so much fun and he's coming around at the right time because the run game is getting cool again with Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs and so many good running backs. He's coming in at the right time.
What is important for him to show at the Big 12 Pro Day or the ASU Pro Day? He obviously he did the vertical jump at the Combine and everybody was wowed with how high he could jump. But for you as a professional scout, what are you looking for when you see Cam Skattebo's Pro Day?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know that a 40 time matters so much for him. There are guys it matters for. I think Tedero McMillan, the other school in state there. I think 40 time matters for him a little bit just because it shows up on tape. With Skattebo, I don't know that it matters. Honestly, are you healthy is the biggest thing. The rest is on tape. So He kind of is who he is at this point, and it's both a good and bad thing. Right, that there aren't really any unknowns when it comes to his evaluation, which makes him a pretty easy guy to figure out. He's not what I would consider an upside guy, right? He's not one of these dudes that runs a 4.3 but only had 150 carries in college, and we're trying to figure out, okay, who are you? What is your game? How does it translate to the next level? Why did you not have production? There are a lot of running backs like that in this draft. He's certainly not one of them. So I don't honestly the Pro Day. Show up that you're healthy. I guess you can run a 40 if you want. I'm not going to knock him if he doesn't run a 40. I don't know if it matters after I watched him play against that Texas defense that's going to have 10 dudes drafted eventually. It's just okay, I think we know who Cam Skattebo is at this point.
All right. Last one, at least from me on Cam Skattebo, because I'm just curious. A colleague of ours suggested that the over-under on Cam was halfway through the fourth round. Would you take the over or the under on that? Just right now, today, on March 7th, your best guess.
I think I would take the under, but that's probably pretty good. I think it's late round 3, early round 4.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the Cardinals and edge rushers. Edge rushers, interior defensive line. This is a good draft for, right? It's pretty deep.
Yeah, very good. Great defensive line draft, great edge draft. Yeah.
Because I'm a little worried because there's a lot of talk the Cardinals could move down because they need an extra pick or two. They've got 5 of their own, and then they've got a 7th rounder from somebody else. But I remember last year in the 2nd round, you had Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Max Melton all sitting there. Cardinals make a trade with Atlanta. They move down 8 spots because they liked all of those guys. They liked them all. So they move down 8 spots. They pick up a 6th rounder for a 7th, and they end up with Max Melton. And I think Max is a good player, so I'm not saying this was a bad move. I think Max is good, but a lot of people look at the impact that Cooper DeJean had in Philadelphia, and sometimes you question, is it worth it to move down? Do you think this is a draft in which teams can move down, get some extra inventory, and still get a really, really good defensive edge rusher.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, right? I think the issue with moving down is the further you move down, like there is a drop off in quality of player. You know, in the top 20, you're getting a different type of a more complete player than you're probably getting in round 2. So I love like the draft strategy that goes into this. And you always want to think about how can you stack your board? How can you get the best value between rounds 1, 2, 3, because those are your starter rounds, right? So I think a better way to look at it is, okay, if we don't go defensive end in round 1, what's going to be there in round 2? And if we don't go, you know, whatever position, it might be wide receiver or corner. If we don't go that in round 1, where is it in round 2? Where is it in round 3? I would say this year, the defensive end position is deep into round 2 and maybe the top of round 3, but there is going to be a drop off in the caliber of player that you're getting, you know, at 15, 16, is that at 16, right? At 16, like,
16, yeah.
We're talking about Mike Green from Marshall, you know, or Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College. Like those guys are going to be more complete players than Jack Sawyer from Ohio State in the middle of round 2. You know, so it's like, I think when it's a key position that's a big need like that, I would be a little bit hesitant to trade back, even in a draft that does have good depth.
Matt Miller, our guest here on the Burns and Gambo Show, talking about the NFL draft. And kind of along those same lines, I want to ask you about another position that we've seen linked to the Cardinals a little bit in the pre-draft process, and that's offensive line. And I know, you know, we're kind of going deep into draft strategy here, but is offensive line one of those positions where you might say, hey, because it's not as good of a draft in the offensive line, let's go there in the first round and get our edge in the second? Is that a viable strategy in the 2025 NFL draft if you're the Cardinals?
I think that's a better strategy, especially if your need is at tackle. If you're talking about, hey, we need a guard, round 2, you're good. But if you need especially like a right tackle, which I would imagine is where we're thinking here,
yes,
right? With
yes,
Paris Johnson being such a good young player. Like with a right tackle, okay, if Armand Membo happens to be there at 16, I think you run that card in. And I know they do it electronically, but it's a fun old thing, right? So it's like you email that card in as fast as possible if Armand Membo is there. Josh Connerly from Oregon, another good player that could fit at right tackle. I think Kelvin Banks will probably be gone from Texas. He's never played right tackle, but I think he has the athletic ability to do it. So I think it does come down to who's there, because there is a drop-off. So Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, Armand Membo, they're probably going to come off fairly quickly. And then it's guys like Josh Connerly from Oregon, who would be, I think, a plug-and-play right tackle with his athletic ability and how smart he is. And then you kind of have another bit of a drop-off where you're starting to get into projections. Josh Simmons from Ohio State would be interesting. He's played some right tackle, but he had a torn patella tendon in mid-October. And he's saying he's going to be cleared by mid-April. We'll see. But that's a player where I wouldn't want to rely on him necessarily in that year one scenario where it's like, okay, we need a right tackle today. I don't know that you would want to rely on him given that injury.
3 years ago, when the Cardinals didn't have a first-round pick because they traded it for Hollywood Brown because Hopkins was out, the Cardinals' first pick in that draft was Trey McBride. Steve Keim was the GM. We all said they're taking a tight end. At that time, they had tight ends. They had like 3 of them. Like Zach Ertz was still here. Are you surprised in any way at how dominant Trey McBride has been in the NFL? He's probably going to get a big extension here sometime soon with the Cardinals, and he might be one of the best, if not the best, tight end in the league right now.
No, I'm not surprised. I love him and did coming out. I think the only thing, was how well or how quickly he would translate. So that's what I think has impressed me the most is how quickly he's become that guy, because he's been fantastic. And it seems like it happened overnight for him, which that's what you want to see, right? And in a league where there are a lot of good young tight ends, he's a lot of the guys that he was kind of in a group with coming out have not hit their potential. So I think that's another, thing. If you're a Cardinals fan, is like, okay, obviously new regime now, but he has hit his potential like through the roof, whereas other guys haven't. Dalton Kincaid hasn't, Michael Mayer hasn't. So I think to have Trey, who is exceeding those expectations, and even when I look at team building, it's like, okay, I would love for the Cardinals to add another receiver. but you have Trey in there. So it's like you kind of have your number 2 option in the pass game, or right now he might even be the number 1 option. So you've got your 2 guys, your 2 young guys. And I think that's where you got to feel really good about where things are at right now.
All right, Matt, leave us with this real quick. Any concern? Concern is probably the wrong word. But when you look back at the first year that Marvin Harrison Jr. had as the 4th pick overall in the draft, I guess I'll use the word concern. Is there concern that maybe it wasn't everything that everybody thought it was going to be?
I'm not going to be concerned yet. I remember the days when wide receivers didn't do anything as rookies because it is such a hard transition, and especially when, we can look at guys like Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors. They went to offenses where there were some other weapons. I think Marvin was expected to be the savior of that passing game to some degree, especially, with Trey not getting into the end zone so much early in the year. I think he saw a lot of coverages that those other receivers didn't. I still anticipate he's going to be a great, great pro. He understands it. Obviously, coming from a football family, he's got the aptitude, the work ethic, the athletic ability. So, no, I wouldn't worry, not at all.
All right. Matt, we appreciate the time. Good stuff as always. Hopefully we'll get you back on closer to the draft. We appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Matt Miller, ESPN NFL draft analyst and insider, our guest here on the Burns and Gambo Show.
Thanks for watching Burns and Gambo. Click to see more from the guys and hit the button in the middle to subscribe so you never miss a video from Arizona sports.